There is a moment somewhere around 3.3 million years ago that nobody witnessed. A small, upright creature standing on the African savanna, holding a rock, not throwing it, not building with it, using its edge to scrape something off a bone, getting at the fat inside, solving, for what may have been the very first time, the problem that every living thing on Earth shares. How do I get enough to stay alive today? That creature was not fully human, but it was the beginning of the answer to this question, and the answer, followed forward across millions of years, leads directly to the food on your plate right now. So what did the first humans actually eat? Not what you've been told. The popular image of early humans is a hunter, a spear, a mammoth, fire and red meat and survival by strength. That story is exciting and mostly wrong. For the earliest stretch of human prehistory, the diet looked almost nothing like that. It looked more like digging, tubers, roots, bulbs, underground storage organs of plants that hold concentrated energy reserves beneath the surface, invisible to everything that walks above ground, except the creature smart enough to know they're there. They don't rot in summer. They don't disappear in winter. They sit in the earth and wait, and for the earliest humans, they were the single most reliable source of calories available. Researchers studying the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer groups on Earth, whose lifestyle offers the closest living parallel to our earliest ancestors, found that underground tubers made up the majority of calories consumed, especially during dry seasons when everything else vanished. Not occasional food, not backup food, the foundation, the thing that made everything else possible. The meat came later, and even then, it arrived in a way that required no hunting at all. Early hominins were scavengers. This is the part that changes the picture completely. For hundreds of thousands of years before coordinated hunting existed, early humans followed predators. Lions made a kill, hyenas fed, vultures circled, and somewhere at the edge of that scene, a small group of hominins waited, not passively, strategically, watching for the moment when the larger predators moved away, then moving in fast to take what was left. What was left was the parts nobody else could use, the bones, the skull, the marrow sealed inside both. To get to it, they used stone tools, the oldest confirmed stone tools ever found, discovered at a site in Kenya called Lomekwi 3, date back 3.3 million years. They weren't weapons, they were processing tools, rocks selected for their edges, used to crack open bones that no jaw in nature was strong enough to break. Inside those bones was marrow, almost pure fat, extraordinarily calorie-dense, the kind of nutrition that could sustain a body for an entire day from a single bone. Fat was the original target, not protein, not muscle. Fat. This matters more than most people realize. The human brain is nearly 60% fat. It requires a continuous supply of dietary fat to develop and function. Without consistent access to dense fat sources, the brain growth that eventually produced modern human cognition simply could not have happened. Marrow wasn't just food. It was, in a very direct sense, the fuel that built the organ you're using right now to read these words. Alongside scavenging, early humans gathered constantly. Fruit when it was in season, nuts when they could find them, eggs raided from nests, insects, grubs, termites, larvae, locusts, collected in enormous quantities whenever available. The insect portion of the early human diet is almost completely absent from popular accounts of human prehistory, but the nutritional evidence and the behavior of modern hunter-gatherer groups both point to the same conclusion. Insects were not a desperation food. They were a primary food, calorie-dense, protein-rich, available in almost every landscape on Earth, and requiring almost no tools to collect. The first humans were not picky. They could not afford to be. Everything edible was evaluated. Everything remotely safe was consumed. The diet was extraordinarily wide. Dozens of different plant species, multiple animal sources, seasonal foods that appeared briefly and had to be consumed in large quantities immediately. The body adapted to this variety. It expected this variety. It was built around the assumption that no single food source would be available all the time, and that survival required the ability to extract nutrition from whatever the landscape currently offered. Then, somewhere between 400,000 and 1 million years ago, fire arrived. The controlled use of fire is arguably the single most important event in human dietary history, not because it made food safer, though it did, not because it provided warmth, though it did that too, but because it fundamentally changed how many calories the human body could extract from food. Cooking breaks down the cellular walls of plants, releasing starches that would otherwise pass through the digestive system largely unused. It denatures proteins in meat, making them dramatically easier to absorb. A cooked tuber delivers roughly twice the usable calories of a raw one. Cooked meat delivers significantly more nutrition per gram than raw meat. The same food, transformed by heat, became a completely different proposition for the human body. The result was surplus. For the first time in human prehistory, it became possible to eat less food and get more energy from it. That surplus went somewhere. Researchers believe it went directly into the brain. The human brain is the most metabolically expensive organ in the known animal kingdom. It consumes roughly 20% of the body's total energy, despite being only about 2% of body weight. Fueling that brain required a consistent, dense, reliable calorie source. Cooked food provided it, and the brain, fed consistently for the first time, grew and kept growing. By around 300,000 years ago, anatomically modern humans had emerged. The diet had expanded further. Evidence from sites across Africa and the Middle East shows shellfish, fish, bird eggs, small mammals, large game, and a wide range of plant material all being consumed and processed. The tools had become more sophisticated. The strategies had become more complex. Groups coordinated hunts. They planned across seasons. They stored food for the first time, not in buildings, but in knowledge. They knew where the tubers would be in winter. They knew which riverbed held fish in the dry season. They carried that information in their heads and passed it to their children. The food was still wild, but the relationship to it had become something entirely new. Then 12,000 years ago, agriculture arrived and changed everything again. But that story belongs to a different chapter, the chapter that matters here. The one that runs from the first stone tool to the first controlled fire to the first coordinated hunt, is the story of a species learning, slowly and through enormous difficulty, how to stay alive in a world that offered no guarantees. They ate what the earth gave them. They processed it with rocks and fire and hands. They shared it, because sharing it increased everyone's survival. They remembered where it had been last season. They planned for where it might be next. And across millions of years of doing exactly that, they built the brain that eventually figured out how to grow food on purpose. The creature standing on the African savanna 3.3 million years ago, cracking a bone with a rock to get the fat inside, had no concept of what it was starting. It was just hungry, same as you.